we'll go ahead with the second speaker, Dr. Rahul KATHARIA. He's a professor and head, Department of Transfusion Medicine, Amrita Hospital and Research Center, Faridabad, Haryana. His major achievements are: he is a young inventor, travel Grand Korean Society of Hematology 2019, World Johnson Fellowship of ISBT 2017, and he has got award in his credit is Apheresis Award winner for the best project submission and funding AABB 2016, and he has a lot of publications, scientific publications on his credit, and few are and he's a reviewer of journals also. He's a Vox, Sang, Transfusion Medicine, AGTS, IJHBT, GJTM, very prestigious journals. Vice General Secretary of Telemedicine Society of India, UP chapter, Assistant State Nodal Officer of Hemophilia Program, UP Uttar Pradesh, member and resource person in various national and state level technical committees, and his areas of interest are apheresis medicine, antenatal serology, and cellular therapy. Sir, with this, I request to start the second presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Before I start, I would like to thank the Caho Diagnostic Division, Mamta ma'am, and everyone for giving me this opportunity. Before I start, I would just like to say to Dr. Kamini ma'am, that was one wonderful presentation. I would say to set a benchmark, and it's quite difficult to match that benchmark. Be it the presentation or the slides, they were just amazing. And I can also say that my work has been cut short. I don't have to go much deep what exactly I want to convey. And so I'll talk about on the other aspects where when we have all those things in place and still we're not able to achieve what we really are looking for. So the topic which I chose is let your vein be the vessel of hope, taking your compassion or the donor's compassion into action. I really want to save a life, but somehow I'm not there to donate the blood. So what exactly is stopping me from donating a blood, even if I'm quite motivated? So I'll talk about those things in bits and bits and try to collate a collage where we can address those issues to improve the outcomes of voluntary blood donations. So this the overview for my presentation will be where we stand, why we should donate, the hurdles, the overcoming the hurdles, the concept of community interface, evaluation, the role of CAPS and behavioral models. So if we talk about the approach towards donation, that we already have multiple things in place. The government is committed, the NGOs are committed, we have in place donor education programs, the communication strategies are there. We specifically hire a motivator, a counselor in a blood center just to recruit and retain donors and convert the already existing replacement donations into voluntary donation. As today we are celebrating a World Blood Donor Day, we tend to recognize and felicitate others. Still, there is something which we are not able to cross that line and not able to achieve that the 100% voluntary blood donation idea which WHO had 20 years back when this the World Blood Donor Day celebration started. So I think this has been already apprised by the previous speaker, the scenario of blood donation distribution across the globe, that is 118 million donations are there. And as per WHO, it says that I need to have at least 10 units per 1,000 population. So where we stand, if we see it's 10 units, 1,000 population, and we see the donation rates across the various countries, this data, it shows that Switzerland is 113 donation per 1,000, whereas India lingers around something around which is 4, may have increased because this data was from 2023 to 6.6 or 7. And if we distribute the entire world donation, we see that developed countries, the blood donation rate is 38, whereas transitional, India comes into a transition. We cannot say we are a developing country or we cannot say we are a developed country. We are in that phase of 7.5 donations per 1,000 donors. And this transitional phase is basically comprised of 11 countries, which comes from Southeast East Asia region, and it collates to say 15% of the total blood donations, global blood donations, and 26% of the global population. And our blood donation ranges from 1.8 to 30.8, which is a huge difference if we see in terms of the range, 1.8 to 30.8, with a median of 7.9. And India as a country hovers something around the mark of 7. So if we see why there is disparity when it comes to other countries in India, is our major donation is basically because of our first-time donation. We tend to have, we are trying to collect what we really require, but the majority of the donations is our first-time. We lack those repeat voluntary blood donors. It is because of we have heterogeneous structure for blood banking. We have government blood banks, private blood banks, the centers run by NGOs, and having this disparity brings in the different levels of sophistication. Be it the work process or the staff or the environment. This will change when you move from a government to a private to an NGO handles standalone blood bank. And when there is a disparity in sophistication or the work practices, it affects ultimately the numbers of voluntary blood donors. This was one publication which came in the year 2023, where we have talked about the total donation, which is 13.7 million units, against what we require is 14.6. And we collect 9 units overall out of our for 1,000 population. Of these 9 units, 6.5 is from voluntary donation. Eligible donor pool is 400 millions. And if we see the supply, we donate around 33.8 donation per 1,000 eligible donor population versus 36.3. So there is a difference, still a difference of 2.5 approximately per 1,000 population, which creates a gap of 1.5 millions when it comes to the demand for the patients. And our voluntary blood donation has risen from 54%, which was there in 2006, in 20 years to almost 84%. And the donation required per bed is 11.2 units per year, which is fairly as per the international standard. But one thing where we don't look at is the number of beds. The WHO says for a population, we need to have 2.7 beds per 1,000 population, whereas India is hovering something around 0. And if we extrapolate this data, if India goes to that number of beds with ICU as well as general beds to 2.4 or say, so the estimation donation would be 62.3 versus the actual of 33.8. So now the difference, which was initially 2.5 per 1,000, starts to look at almost the twice. So that gap has to be filled, which cannot be filled by replacement donation or a forced donation or the peer pressure donation. It has to be an altruistic voluntary donations. Why we call about, why we say voluntary donations, as it has been proven that if you see the TTI prevalences, the TTI prevalence where we test for the units against different viral markers, the percentage of this prevalence is 0.3 for voluntary donations, whereas for replacement, it is almost 2%. So we can say a donation which comes from voluntary is safer. So one thing which I'm not adding up the disease load in the community, I'm giving far safer blood from a person where I don't have to push to donate. So I think this has been already told, but I'll just state it again, why we should donate. The basic factors are that the blood is the only source. We don't have substitutes to it. It is used to save lives. It's my social responsibility. It builds the community and generates hope. And one medical factor that out of every 10 patients in the hospital, one would be required. So this is the basic reasons why we should be donating or donation should be initiated. And based on those different CAP studies has been done, and they've generated the reason why donors come to the hospital or to the blood center to donate blood. And the most common reason, that is 68% of the cases, state that I'm there to help the patient, whereas 65 says that I'm there to gain health benefits. And the reasons they say that I'm there to donate because I'd get a holiday, or they come under the peer pressure, which is a very common thing to happen in our fraternity in India, where I come under a peer pressure. I'm a relative or a friend, which comes for a first time forced donation. So this first time forced donation has to be converted into voluntary donations. So this is where the gaps can be filled. One thing which we have talked about in previous talk, that the anemia can be a major factor, and we have a cutoff of 12.5. And if you see, this is a physiological cause for death. And if we take anemia as a whole, 75% of females and 37% of male donors are deferred because of low hemoglobin. And women only contribute 6% on the entire donor pool in India, mainly because of anemia deficits. So if we are able to have the Anemia Mukt Bharat program running successfully, we might be able to add up in the women donor pools, which is still 6% to going to 20% or 25%, to shorten this gap. And once they are into donations, I would still say when I was doing my schooling, or say first year or second year of MBBS, there was one notion that if you teach a female, and means they teach a family. And if the lady in the house is motivated to donate blood, I'm sure the entire family will definitely be motivated to donate blood. And apart from that, there are a few barriers, myths. I think it has been already discussed about what exactly fear and poor access to donation sites are. And this is the well-established approach which has been taken into account, where they use 4 A's: awareness, information, appeal, interest, aspiration, and action, to get the donors for donation, where dispersing the required information about importance of blood donation, the TTI testing, the harmlessness that giving blood doesn't harm you, and putting up the community responsibility, the emotional appeal, that is a patient-specific patient requires it, or there's a disaster where we have to donate the blood. These are already in place, and we tend to differentiate or tell them about the various processes which are in place, where we describe what exactly happens to our blood donation. So this is 4 A's are already into place. We are still not able to convert that 70% of the country's average of voluntary blood donation to 90 or 100. So based on those, we have lots of studies and CAPS studies have been done to assess the donor psychology. They have studied why people refuse to donate, why people hesitate to donate, that somebody who has already given doesn't want to donate. And second aspect, why people donate and why people tend to donate again. There are 4 different pillars. I'm not giving, I'm reluctant to donate, I donate, but I'm not coming back again. So there are 4 different psychologies in it, which has to be addressed and is to be taken care of, because in this era where all information is on the internet, but apart from educating the masses, individualized approach will become the norm in coming years, where we can find the solution to individual problems and address them to increase the psychology, improve the psychology, and increase the voluntary blood donation. So talking about the why donors don't want to donate, most common reason that I don't have time. I had to travel a lot to get the donation done. I don't have any information how I have to do it. It might affect my health, apathy, and negative reaction. So it is, they tend to find n number of reasons, and depending on those reasons, there was a CAP study where they studied, they addressed why exactly people don't want to donate. And if you see the table over here, 50% of the responses says that they were not able to give a reason why they were not able to donate blood, followed by being afraid of needle pricks. So this 40% where they don't know why they're not giving blood can be taken as a population which can be addressed with a better approach to convert them from being non-donors to donors. And the moving to the second category where they hesitate to donate. Again, the most common out of everything has been decided that I fear of needle, I fear of pain, or fear of sight of blood, or I might feel weakness after I give blood donation. So these address this kind of fear can only be addressed by a thorough counseling or the motivation which can be put into place to make the donor feel safe when the donor is coming for blood donation. So this is the most common reason people why they don't want to donate again. Again, lack of communication. They have given once, but they have never been asked again to give and donate blood, or they had an unhappy past experience. I would say I've been working in the fraternity for 20 odd years, but my first blood donation in the year 1999 was not a very pleasing kind of. I woke up when people were holding a glass of juice in front of me after giving blood. So had I not been in the medical fraternity or the same fraternity, I might have not come back to blood donations again. So this is something which has to be improved. The donor reactions, the non-availability of blood when I really require it. I have given once, but when I needed it for me or my family, I was not able to get that blood. And second, everybody wants a bit of appreciation in terms, not in terms of money, but in terms of recognition, failure to appreciate those donors. And again, the impression that my blood will be misutilized when we tend to charge the processing cost from the patient that I'm taking blood from a donor and then I'm charging for that blood to the patient. So the reasons are to be addressed to improve those donations. And based on those dropping rates, the roadblocks can be divided into two parts. One, organization that as a blood center or a hospital, what I can do to improve those roadblocks, which can be lack of policy, planning, or implementation. So say I take maximum of replacement donations. My replacement donation covers my requirement for the hospital. I'm not motivated enough to call for voluntary donors because be frank, but the onus lies on the patient relatives to generate the blood requirement for the patient. Or there is inadequate initiatives, or my staff is not well trained, or my staff is not well behaved or competent. There's inadequate financing in generating the IC materials, or insufficient use of mobile blood collection vans or a centralized donor database. These 2 points, I think, can be not individual center or institute, but as a part of the entire state or community or the country has to be implemented. And again, the lack of regular donors, and then is quality assurance. I don't feel that the process or the way the things has been done in the blood center is helping the donor. So this can be an organizational roadblocks. Apart from the organizational roadblocks, there can be personal roadblocks for the donors. That is, I have lots of myth. I'm not being recognized. There is lack of community education, and we don't involve the volunteers from the community to make efforts to bring everybody on one stage for blood donations. And again, that's expecting something financial or health benefit kind of attitude. That is, what if I get, what if I'll get when I donate blood? If I'm donating, that's I already told. If I'm giving a blood free of cost, why you charge that blood from the recipient? That is one thing which is being a very common question when the patient comes back, that why I'm being charged so much amount of money for one process. This is a personal roadblock, and it has to be addressed in a very subtle, simplified version which the person is able to understand. So based on those roadblocks, the donation patterns were assessed, and it was found that they lack a basic motivating factors. As told, that the onus is on the patient relatives to get the blood. But if we try to put emphasis to get a donor, that the donor will be recognized, the donor will be given a reward, or donor will be given a badge or something in return of blood donation, not money, but anything in the form of kind will be given just to get a blood donation from the donor. Then I'll go back to the previous speakers, what they said, altruism. There's a difference between being a volunteer and an altruist. Altruistic will not look for a cause to come for donation. Whereas a volunteer, when he sees there is a demand, I'll volunteer myself to come for a donation. And it has been said that if my donation program is incentive linked, it tend to compromise the relationship between the voluntary altruistic system. So it's the margin becomes the blur. I have to be altruistic to gain the benefits out of a voluntary blood donation. If I ask or force someone, it becomes a replacement and a compromise on the quality as well of my donation, which is happening in the blood center. So what we have to do, we have to explain why blood donation is a noble act and it has to be voluntary. We should look for non-monetary incentives, certificates, memento, badges, which should be given without the donor asking. That is one thing, and they should be treated like I would say heroes and idols, having those centurion clubs in place, awarding 25 donations, 50 donations, 100 donations, which make them that they are important, and why they should come forward to be part of this noble act, and why money shouldn't be included. We say that if you go back the practice across the globe, you'll find there is a factor of monetary gains when you come and donate blood. But this doesn't work in a country like India, because then it brews negligence, then it brews negative practices in the system, which is not good for the quality of the components which will be collecting and giving to the patients. The second thing is that we may lack the community interfaces, that in spite of everything, our replacement, we are at hand-to-mouth condition. In the case of shortage or emergency, we are not able to generate the required number of units, and there's lack of commitment from the society. To whenever there's a call, we might not be able to find a required number of donors when it is really required. So the concept of being a volunteer and altruistic, it becomes confused. So being a volunteer is good, but altruistic is better. See, a volunteer will come in for blood donation when there is a national disaster, war, or accidents, or when there is somebody is requiring blood. But an altruistic person says that today I'm completing 3 months of my time, I'll come forward and donate blood for whosoever patient might. Then why community is important? Everybody, I told that everybody requires a small recognition. Create a story of hope. This is the few examples where a bride's brother collapses in a marriage in Lucknow, and somebody comes and donate blood, donate platelets for the donor, as the donor was dengue. So create a story or create a thread where it says the most precious wedding gift can be from a stranger's vein, or a student who met an accident, requires a rare blood, and somebody who is there by chance in the city comes and give the donation. So it can be one stranger's timely act made sure a final semester wasn't a final chapter. So similarly, it's sometimes it's not the equipment or the expertise, it's the human heart that beats for another that saves a life. This it is basically a way of rewarding who has already given blood, so that person comes back and donates again. Apart from that, it serves as a plate where the person who is watching it wants to be part of it, that the person wants to come back and donate. A non-donor is willing to be part of this story of hope to donate blood. And third is the intervention, the approach. Try to understand this thing. It's not about the blood is being donated, it is being collected. So then there's a collection of blood is involved, then it is collected by an organization. So we have two phases. One is donor. The second phase is of the organization. The responsibility is larger in terms of the organization when the blood collection process has to be mature enough to inculcate those habits and make the donors safer in their environment. So this is, I won't be going to details. These are the measures which are already in place for recruitment and retentions. That is school syllabus, early exposure, community levels, groups, clubs for voluntary blood donations, helplines, having research to address those issues, and the similar way of that fostering good relationship, confidentiality, keeping the donor informed, and having loyalty programs. And one thing which has to be important is updated knowledge. Why we talk about updated knowledge is that the donor selection criteria, say if I'm not updated enough for a donor selection criteria, a few years back when we moved from 60 years to 65 years, a donor comes to me, I refuse that donor. The donor will have a bitter experience in go back. So it's very important that we have updated knowledge. Our staff is courteous enough to address the queries raised by the donors. And this is where the point when we talk about updated knowledge loyalty programs, when we are able to convert those voluntary donors into repeat voluntary donors and those replacement donors into voluntary donors. So this aspect where we address the relationship between the donor and the blood center, the experience what the donor has, the knowledge the staff has, and the skill they have, where they reciprocate with the needs of the donor, will change the outlook of a donor towards who can choose to become a repeated voluntary blood donor. So this is moving to the last part, where every aspect to improve the donations, improve the outcomes in place, but we never go back, as I would say, how the EQUAS programs work, how the quality assurance programs work. We monitor in the forms of key performance indicators. We can choose upon whether implementing a strategy has brought about any change, maybe in terms of increase in donations, decrease in permanent deferrals, or increase in repeat regular donations, or increase in number of organizations which are attached with the blood center or the hospital for blood donation. So we need to do CAP studies, SWOT studies, which will help us in devising a targeted approach towards that we can address a very specific reason and devise a customized, would say, approach towards the cause which is hindering in developing efficient voluntary blood donor program. So these are a few studies where I've taken out where they have found only the motivational factors. If you see the A, which exactly is the most motivating factor, and they did a CAP study where they found that I want to help my family and a friend was the biggest motivation. Similarly, we can have CAPs on myths and fear, why the donors are being dropped out, why they don't want to come back again, or we can have a separate population of people who have never donated blood, why they don't want to donate blood, so that the individual queries can be answered and a bigger plan can be devised to include those non-donors into the donor. So this is one example which was published a few years back, where they have given, it's not the one single approach, similar type of questions which has to be asked for donor or non-donor. If you see the example, for a donor, the inhibitors would be a long queue, location, or lack of information. But for a non-donor, it could be fear, lack of interest, lack of transparency, lack of requisition for donation. So a customized approach has to be in place when we are dealing in a very specific population of donors, be a non-donor or donor. Maybe it's a repeat donor or first-time donor replacement donations. And this is the algorithm they have shared, where we can integrate the traditional approach with the new behavioral science interventions, where we talk about the aspects of the use of applied muscle tension or hydration to prevent reactions. This can be taken into account to devise a CAP study or the measures, just to make the environment, not only when you're recruiting the donor as a part of the blood center, but at the donation side, as well as when the donation is done. If somebody has a reaction, how I need to address the donor, and the donor has a reaction which doesn't call for a permanent deferral, but a temporary deferral. Because if I'm not able to address that, the reaction which donor had, suppose the donor had a grade 1 vasovagal reaction. If I'm not able to address or manage that donor with a grade 1 vasovagal reaction, the donor will never come back. So what happens, that donor will become a kind of a permanent deferral. So the individual approaches can be integrated with the conventional traditional methods what we have been using for years as just to improve the donation as well as the voluntary donation rates in the blood centers. So to conclude, most important thing is need to have uniform practices. A donor comes to a blood center, I refuse for a donation. We don't have a centralized donor database. He goes to a different blood centers in blood. It creates a rift that this blood center is not accepting me as a donor, whereas some other has accepted me. So we need to have a common practice, though we have a set criteria for donation. There are few ambiguities where one's blood center might be differing the donor or the other blood center might be accepting the donor. Apart from that, we need to address the entire donation process. If the donor is well versed for the entire process of blood donation, right from recruitment till what happens to the blood which is given to the patients and how it is being given, it will develop a blood donation habit and increase the donation rate, return behaviors. The environment, the atmosphere of facility has to be of I won't say top-notch quality, but should be more comfortable where the donor comes and feels at ease while giving blood donation. Our staff has to be competent and skills. They should be able to address the queries, which improves the psychological aspects of the donors. Apart from that, approaches like community interface, use of social media, which are already in place, myths correction, loyalty programs, educational behavior aspects has to be there. And the most important aspect is that I need to have a monitoring system. I can do thousands of things just in a hope that one day I'll improve. But if I don't do the evaluation, if I don't go back and introspect the methods where I'm implementing to have more voluntary donations, I might be using my potential, using my resources in a redundant way, which can be deterrent on the outcomes of the blood donation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rahul. Very lucid and wonderful presentation. Very good.